main executive function is we have to deal with ordinance. Let's take ordinances. Although we don't expect question in public administration, but you cannot demarcate a line also. Because of this dilemma, let's say we teach also some, otherwise it is not as obvious, but you cannot demarcate a line between what they will ask, what they will not ask. Because they have been asking also in paper second some of the GS type. Some questions have GS category, the GS type of also question they are asking. You should know it anyhow. So, since in public administration we have delegated legislation as a topic, do we have this topic? No. Where it is mentioned? Do you know that delegated legislation we have topic in Union Parliament? Syllabus कितने साल हो गए पढ़े हुए? 3 decades. सिलेबस है भी या चोरी हो गया? किसी ने चुराया नहीं अभी तक, बचा हुआ है. In 6th chapter, administrative law, we have delegated legislation topic in paper 1. This is it. So, this plus constitutionalism तो पता ही होगा. No, in its 1st chapter, paper 2nd. Right. Anyhow, if at all they ask in public administration, since they are not mentioned in GS, see the paradox. In GS, it is not a topic. Delegated legislation and constitutionalism, although we are expecting a question there, but you cannot be so confident, the way we are not confident about ordinance. But we have topic like delegated legislation and constitutionalism, and there can be a possibility of asking ordinance by linking with constitutionalism, because it is a very obvious link on negative side between between constitutionalism and ordinance, because if ordinance misused, it threatens constitutionalism. That we can consider. Is a simple question also. When ordinance misused, it threatens constitutionalism. Comment. This. So that is what we have to deal. No, so let's write. Already कुछ थोड़ा बहुत आता ही आपको, isn't it? अब मास्टर ऑफ लक्ष्मीकांत. No, फर्स्ट पेज भी नहीं. So let's write. Article 123 and 213. Article 123 and 213 deal with ordinance making powers of the executive. Ordinance making powers of the executive at union and state level. At union and state level. In extraordinary situations. Union and state level in extraordinary situation. Extraordinary situations. Situations. However, due to its misuse, ordinances have become threat to constitutionalism and rule of law. Constitutionalism and rule of law. Change paragraph. Article 123. Article 123 states that President can proclaim an ordinance. President can proclaim an ordinance if he is satisfied that an extraordinary situation has arisen. An extraordinary situation has arisen. Which demands framing of a law by the executive, provided the parliament is not in session. Provided the parliament is not in session. Any such decision will not be questioned by any court. Any such decision will not be questioned by any court. Any court. Okay. So what happens? Or 213. So it says that President, if extraordinary situation, if there is any extraordinary situation, urgent situation which demands that the executive should bring any law, adopt any law, and that situation parliament is not in session. When parliament is not in session, then executive can make a law through ordinance. This, by declaring an ordinance, a law is made. This you should know that. That is how it says about extraordinary situation. Plus, parliament is not in. This parliament is not in session. It means, let's say, ordinance is a delegated power. It is a delegated power to executive to deal against any such situation by making a law. This. So lawmaking power bill is done by legislature. Executive is for law execution. This. So it is a delegated power. Delegated power means many a time you are delegated. Already we have told delegated power. Delegation of power in principles of organization. This extraordinary situation plus parliament is not in session and it is a delegated power. This. So executive can deal against any such rationale. In general we can say that deal against any such vacuum, let's say that. So since sessions have gaps, in that gap there can be extraordinary situation that you need to make a law. So you will deal against this. That is how the framers of constitution they have. But then it has lots of scope for misuse. This. It has lots of scope for misuse. ऐसे तो वो law बनाते नहीं, isn't it? But ordinance का आएगा तो they will become proactive. No. Anyhow, the scope for misuse. So when there are various scope for misuse, first is what is extraordinary situation? A situation which is ordinary for one can be extraordinary for. Some of you are facing war-like situation for preparation. No, do or die. लिखा है कमरे में. अच्छा अभी वो आया नहीं. जब लास्ट अटेम्प्ट आता है तब लिखते हैं. When last attempt comes, then people write. Do or quit India movement. Anyhow, so extraordinary situation by one is ordinary situation by another. This. And house is in recess. Right. 3 times in a year. Right. House is in recess means not in session. The house is in recess 3 times in a year. So you will wait for the recess. No. You will wait for the recess to issue ordinance. This. But यहाँ तक भी acceptable था. Still it was acceptable. इसके बाद वाला नहीं. Right. कि you issue ordinance. House comes in session. You do not approve it. You do not approve it. Hence it lapses. An ordinance can survive 6 months plus 6 weeks if it is not approved by the House, means Parliament or Assembly. So when Assembly comes in session or Parliament comes in session, so they don't deliberately approve it. After session, again it is issued. This is called repromulgation. This. And that is not accepted. Because framers ने बोला promulgation. आपने क्या शुरू कर दिया? Repromulgation. Opportunity was given to become vice captain. You became captain one day and you fired some players and brought some players of your choice. No, this is how it is. So that is how misuse of delegated powers. Or which state can be role model in this? Right. Not one, not two, not three, 259 ordinances, right, in which several ordinances were re-promulgated. Means they're all re-promulgated ordinances in a span of 10 years, 259 ordinances. Some ordinances were re-promulgated for 14 years. गिनीज बुक ऑफ वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड, ऐसा कुछ होता ही नहीं होगा. Guinness book, right. The Guinness book did not have this criteria because other countries don't have ordinances. Right. This, and I say still Bihar remains Bihar because 259 ordinance, extraordinary situation. So then it should have become extraordinary developed state. Right. Then once an economist, he was studying something that time, he came across such facts. Bihar had 259 ordinances. Hence he went to Supreme Court. That resulted into DC Wadhwa case, which we'll talk after this. So you should know that ki ordinances, if not at center but at state level, it has been misused. At least this will be considered misuse. 259 ordinances re-promulgated and some 14 years. भाई एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी सिचुएशन 1 साल हो सकता है, 2 साल हो सकता है, इमरजेंसी भी इतना लंबा नहीं था. अच्छा, वनवास हो गया, अच्छा रिमाइंडर है. तो वो तो वहीं से शुरू हुआ था, नेवर isn't it? Anyhow, so that way. So this way you should know. Then Constitution में क्या लिखा है? And the courts cannot question satisfaction. अब जब ऐसा केस आएगा तो क्या करेंगे? Then courts started questioning satisfaction. But before that, already there were some cases. One popular case is called Cooper case. So, Cooper case 1971, bank nationalization was done through ordinance. Imagine. Extraordinary decision, ordinary situation. Bank nationalization is done through ordinance. This, and it was challenged in the court. First time, this is how court reviewed it. And that is how it is considered that that time itself it established courts can review ordinances. But that we do not take as popular case. The most important case is DC Wadhwa case. And in the Wadhwa case, it is like SR Bommai case, it is like Menka Gandhi case, it is like any other popular case. The way you have, let's say, Putta Swami case, Arindra Sahani case, in different fields, similarly, Wadhwa case in ordinance is most important case. And DC Wadhwa 1986, which will tell you about what Supreme Court says. Basically, it said that see, you cannot misuse your powers. This, but still misuse did not stop. It did not stop. That is how it will tell that in evolution how the number of ordinances have been issued. And then let's say that a situation has come that now again there is Krishna Kumar case 2017. The last case on ordinance, Krishna Kumar case 2017. There also again they raised their concerns. It means that ordinances have been misused. This we have to know. How and how, let's say they have been misused. What are the safeguards available? So we'll deal by one. But that is how we can consider as the basis. Now there can be some rationales behind why they were given, why let's say ordinances can be issued. What were the rationales? Framers of the Constitution may be also aware about such pitfalls. So that aspect, and then we'll talk pros and cons, etc. So let's write on this from the rationales behind ordinances. Rationales behind ordinances. The framers of the Constitution were aware were aware that ordinance was not in practice in advanced democracies democracies like US and UK. However, still they went on adopting this provision. Okay. Based on following rationales. First, the Indian Parliament functions through sessions. Hence, there is recess time. Unlike UK and US, where Parliament functions throughout the year. Next, the executive may face extraordinary situations. Which may demand adoption of a law to deal against any such vacuum. Next, India is a transitional society. India is a transitional society. Hence, the executive has to bring socio-economic interventions in society, and therefore it should have legal power to bring any such intervention. Right. The rationales, let's say when you write, don't write in bracket. Also in rationales heading you can also write prose. It is also prose, so we will not talk prose. On the prose side, change in paragraph, then you write. It means executive has constitutional backup. For proclaiming ordinances, provided it should be extraordinary situation. provided it should be extraordinary situation. Extraordinary situation. It is also delegated power. It is also delegated power. Power. Hence, executive has the same benefits in issuance of ordinances as law made by legislature. Law made by legislature. However, through an ordinance, constitution cannot be amended. However, through an ordinance, constitution cannot be amended. Ordinance, constitution cannot be amended. Yes. So, this is what you can say the basis, right? So it is power, delegated power. You'll understand what is power or delegation power more when we'll take delegated power in that chapter 6. So, law at first place, law making at first place, law making at secondary place. All these things we need to understand. Then let's write evolution of ordinances. Evolution of ordinances. Since independence, it has gone through various phases, largely drawn as four phases. Based on PRS report, PRS report. 7.1 means ki average number of ordinances in 1 year. These things are nothing but average number of ordinances in 1 year. So during 50s and 60s we had the least number of ordinances. This, in fact 50s if you see, not 60s you includes, it will be further less. This. So every year, each year 7.1 means almost around 7 ordinances were issued. But that rises like anything during coalition era. Highest, let's 19.6 average in 1 year. We declines to 7.9 during 2010, that is called UPA tenure almost. So it is still, let's say 7.9 higher than past. And as of now it is 9 to 10 average in 1 year. Like you can say that if by 2022 they have gone into issuing 80 ordinances in 8 years, I guess 9 years, 8 years, it is like this. So almost 80, let's say, that ordinances. And 10 years UPA government 61 ordinances. This. So facts are not as important as, let's say, that the nature of ordinances. Facts are not as important as nature of ordinances. This you should know that. So generally, let's say कि ordinances should be first issued in extraordinary situation. Second is कि there should not be repromulgation, but a trend has started that कि they are repromulgating ordinances. This, and that repromulgation, let's say, has become one such issue. Third is that कि it is not necessarily in extraordinary situation. This, so many a time it is happening that the ordinance is becoming basis for bypassing legislature. Legislature is getting bypassed. And what you got, a delegated power, it is becoming like it is your most important power. A delegated power has become basis to show your powers. This, and that is how you will find the situations. So incidents of misuse, if you see this, so that when we say, let me tell that, not necessarily extraordinary situation. Not necessarily extraordinary situation. We generally give two examples. One is UPA time, another is BJP time, to balance it. Right. The UPA government brought criminal law amendment. Criminal law amendment bill. After Nirbhaya incident. After Nirbhaya incident, it can be 2012 around, I guess. So they brought a criminal law amendment, right, after Nirbhaya incident. And just after 17 days, session was going to commence. Just after 17 days, session was going to commence. This session was going to commence after 17 days. Right. What is urgent? Is it urgent? Yes. किस बात का अर्जेंट है? इससे क्या सॉल्व करने वाले हो आप? कि अर्जेंट है, क्राइम रुक जाएगा? वो तो अभी तक नहीं हुआ. निर्भया इंसिडेंट नहीं होगा रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव में, या निर्भया इंसिडेंट के जो परपेट्रेटर्स है उनको आप पनिश करोगे. तो क्रिमिनल लॉ रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव तो होता नहीं है, लोगों को बेवकूफ बनाने के लिए. इसलिए लोगों को ये सब पता नहीं है. लक्ष्मीकांत नो, लोगों को तो यही पता चलेगा सरकार ने लॉ लाया है, बचेंगे नहीं. और मीडिया वाले ऐसे ही चलाएंगे, isn't it? So इससे पता चलता है, I cannot avoid speaking some Hindi, you know that. But I will learn South Indian language so that I can speak in some language, some in that language. उसके लिए मुझे शिवमोगा जाना पड़ेगा. ठीक है. So I have been to that place. A friend of mine is there, so that's why I'm listening that. Anyhow, so the question is that what do we say? It is not urgent. You cannot prove that it is urgent situation because the law cannot stop Nirdhaya incident. This. And those who have committed that heinous offense, they would not get punished under that law. Because criminal law you cannot impose retrospectively. Plus, J.S. Verma committee that time which was set up recommended to stop this kind of incident, you do not need a new law. You do not need to amend any law. It is very clearly written. To stop already the laws that you have enough to stop such incidents. And still you are, let's say, bringing amendment bill through ordinance. Thereafter, you know, Kathua incident happened, Hyderabad happened, Hathras happened, Unnao happened, and Badaयूं incident happened. Badaयूं incident on which a movie was made, Article 15. This, so Badaयूं incident, but Uttar Pradesh में ये तीन incident हो चुके हैं. Right. In fact, there are so many incidents that you may not have count this. That is how the law cannot, let's say that. You need to already enough law, so you cannot prove that it is urgent situation. Right. Let's take this. No. वैसे भी मिश्रा जी लोग बहुत पावरफुल होते हैं. No. Right. Especially in Uttar Pradesh. Right. So that is all right. Right. So Nripendra Mishra, right. Try amendment. You should know that the present government started its inning by an ordinance. The first law made by BJP government, this was this ordinance. This, why this ordinance? Very interesting story. Tri law says that anyone who was a member or chairman of Tri, should not hold after retirement any government office for 6 years. And Nripendra Mishra was chairperson of Tri. Right? And he had completed after retirement 4 years. He had completed after retirement 4 years. Hence, the law was amended. And it was mentioned in the law that any member or chairman should not hold office in government after retirement for 4 years. Right. और ये मैंने चेंज नहीं किया है. There is empirical evidence. ये ऐसे ही हुआ है, कोई फिक्शन नहीं है. The facts are facts, you cannot change. Right. So 4 years. Means next time another Mishra ji wants to become, let's say that principal secretary, and he has completed 2 years, so Tri law will be again amended. No, any member or chairperson should not hold office for 2 years. Imagine. Is it urgent situation? Right. How can it be urgent? He is going to be appointed as principal secretary, not cabinet secretary. Cabinet secretary, if it is cabinet secretary, so understandable. If it is national security advisor, so understandable. It is principal secretary which is in PMO, which is not recognized in parliamentary system. Rise of PMO is extra parliamentary. It resembles presidential system, not parliamentary system. The more the rise of PMO, the less the, let's say that healthy convention in parliamentary democracy. So government should have waited for at least 4-5 months. उसके बाद तो सेशन आ ही जाएगा. तब तक ऐसे ही जॉब ले लो उनका. Isn't it? Private advice. You could have done it. But an ordinance was brought. So that is how you know that there are several such situations, and then repromulgation is started. This is extraordinary situation, a trend of repromulgation. Already we have told 259 ordinances in Bihar recent. Land acquisition bill. Two times. Land acquisition bill, लंबा चौड़ा नाम है, but let's say it land acquisition bill. Land acquisition bill was repromulgated 2 times. Imagine, government has complete majority. Present government, but it repromulgated 2 times to bypass Rajya Sabha. Because in Rajya Sabha it lacks majority, hence it could be rejected by Rajya Sabha. It feared like that. The 2 times when it repromulgated, now the 3rd time, then President Pranab Mukherjee speaks that government does not have only legal responsibility but also moral responsibility. Law should be made in letter and spirit. समझदार को इशारा ही करना. Therefore, government junked the bill. See, instead of facing Rajya Sabha, what they do? Junked it. The bill is not brought. Anyhow, so there are some instances where we will find the evolution. Hence, it has resulted. It is said that 1970s, 80s onwards, it started governance by ordinance or ordinance Raj. This is considered as ordinance Raj or governance by ordinance, and that is how judicial interventions increased. This is what we have to talk. So let's write. The evolution shows that there have been high incidences of ordinances after 1970s. And coalition era experience, the highest number of ordinances. Although between 1975 to 1977, 1975 to 1977, record number of ordinances were issued. Record number of ordinances was issued during Indira Gandhi time. Once again, since 2014, once again since 2014, there is a spike in number of ordinances. There is a spike in number of ordinances. An empirical analysis, it is public ad, so we can write this term, but don't write in GS. An empirical analysis shows that first, not all ordinances. An empirical analysis shows that not all ordinances have been issued based on extraordinary situations. And second, extraordinary situations. Second, there are even incidences of repromulgation of ordinances. Repromulgation of ordinances. Like by Bihar, 259 ordinances. Some were repromulgated even for 14 years. Some were repromulgated even for 14 years. 14 years. Next, recent some cases of repromulgation. By both union and state governments. That's judicial interventions. Subheading. Judicial interventions. Okay. First, the Cooper case was related to bank nationalization. bank nationalization done through ordinance, ordinance, which was first such major case of review of ordinance, review of ordinance. Review of ordinance. After this case, government introduced 38th Amendment Act. After this amendment, government introduced 30th Amendment Act to 30th Amendment Act 38th Amendment Act to bar judiciary from judicial review. To bar judiciary, BAR, bar, judiciary, bar, judiciary. From judicial review. From judicial review. The 44th Amendment Act deleted this provision. 44th Amendment Act deleted the amendment done by 30th Amendment Act. Next, DC Wadhwa case. DC Wadhwa case. It is the most important case in which the Supreme Court gave another landmark judgment. Supreme Court gave another landmark judgment. Landmark judgment. That first, President's satisfaction is subject to judicial review. President's satisfaction is subject to judicial review. Judicial review. Second, the court can nullify an ordinance as unconstitutional. Court can nullify an ordinance as unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. Next, ordinances should be issued only in extremely urgent situation. Extremely urgent situations. Urgent situation which could be justified by the executive. Which could be justified by the executive. Executive. Next, however, it gave change in paragraph. However, it gave one exception. However, it gave one exception known as Wadhwa exception. Wadhwa exception. That it allowed repromulgation of ordinance. It allowed repromulgation of ordinance. Repromulgation of ordinance. In case when legislature may not have time to approve an ordinance. Legislature may not have time to approve an ordinance. Approve an ordinance. Right. So that is how you should know this about ordinances, technicalities, some technicalities, which in GS 2022 they have asked Vadva exception. This. In GS they have asked ordinance 2 times since 2013. This. And both questions are related to repromulgation. First repromulgation question was asked when repromulgation of land acquisition bill was done. That time it had lots of debate and discussion on repromulgation. So we expected a question and it was asked in GS paper. Right. And I will share one story related to this. So we had given lots of emphasis in our GS test paper, in ED class. I used to teach in past ED classes. Now I have stopped. Every Sunday, current affairs classes. So that is, we say ED class or editorial discussion. So this story was, let's say, shared by one IPS, Nipun Agrawal, who is now SP in Uttar Pradesh. So once he became IPS, means that year he became IPS, he came back and he asked, that question was asked, repromulgation of ordinance. He is told that, sir, in class discussion we used to think, why sir is giving so much emphasis on this question? This repromulgation. And that was asked. After, let's say, going in service, becoming, let's say, not SP before that, once he called and he told, sir, today we were discussing repromulgation of ordinance in our district with some of judges, district judges. He told that today you came in mind, right? Because of that repromulgation. Anyhow, so that's not the point, just to create your situation. No. These things happen, keep happening. The question is that in GS they ask, and we know very less people who know about repromulgation. Knowledge related to repromulgation is less. This, because Vadva exception, we have seen that very less people know when we ask. Forget about that. Technicality related to even ordinances, people know less. Isn't it? Because people study in the name of polity only Lakshmikant. Aapse to abhi Lakshmikant bhi nahi ho raha hai. Isn't it? But people in the name of polity, what they study? Lakshmikant. Kant ho gaya, Lakshmi aa jayenge, isn't it? So, theek hai. Right. Anyhow, so what we are saying is Vadhava exception. We'll talk, but the court said this, that we can declare any such ordinance as unconstitutional if we find it is arbitrary. What is arbitrary? If you fail to justify, if any case is challenged in the court and you fail to justify, government failed to justify that it is extraordinary situation, so court can nullify that. This, but they gave extraordinary situation, Vadhava exception. It is based on the rationale that suppose any ordinance has been issued and that ordinance is supposed to be approved by the parliament when it comes into session, and that ordinance demands detailed discussion. That ordinance demands that you have to send the ordinance to committee for its scrutiny. Because some bills demand that it should be scrutinized. So when you send the bills to committee, again it will not be passed. The approval, let's say that it should be done. Either first you approve it, then you pass it. The bill may demand detailed discussion, and the parliament can have shortage of session because it has many other such, let's say, business and other such important bills to be passed. In that case, Vadhava gave this exception ki in that case you can repromulgate. This repromulgation can be done in that case. This was again challenged in Narasimha Rao government time. There may be any odd re-promulgation. So Gyanendra Kumar case, let's say. So what we have written, Gyanendra Kumar, Gyanendra Singh, ऐसा ही कुछ होगा. So Gyanendra is correct. So in this case, re-promulgation was challenged. But that time Supreme Court went with Vadhva exception. It gave the same exact line that Parliament may have lack of time and hence it may re-promulgate. And then finally, let's say Krishna Kumar case, again it is related to Bihar re-promulgation case. So in this case, Supreme Court becomes more clear, decisive, and Chanchud in that bench that time, not Chief Justice yet. And he has a favorite, lots of phrase I guess nowadays, fraud on constitution. So this is how he says in this, re-promulgation is a fraud on constitution. This is his judgment. And another judge says that it should be simply impermissible. But why Vadhva exception is asked even if you have 2017 judgment? That was the main technicality of the case, means question. Why Vadhva exception has survived even if Krishna Kumar case in which judges have spoken against re-promulgation? Right. So judges spoke against re-promulgation, but they did not override Vadhva case. Vadhva judgment they did not override. They criticized re-promulgation, but they did not override Vadhva exception. Hence, even if re-promulgation in the eyes of Supreme Court today is impermissible, still Vadhva exception is there. And when Vadhva exception is there, so that is how it will reach. Government can re-promulgate. And that is how governments have done. After Krishna Kumar judgments, Government of India has re-promulgated 2 more bills. Kerala has re-promulgated 5 bills. This you should know that. So it means, let's say, re-promulgation continues. Then should we make it unlawful? Supreme Court has to decide, isn't it? This is what we have to talk. So let's write on this. Right? Gyanendra Kumar case. Gyanendra Kumar case. In this, re-promulgation was challenged. Re-promulgation was challenged, but Supreme Court reinforced Vadhva exception. Supreme Court reinforced Vadhva exception. Vadhva exception. Next, Krishna Kumar case. Krishna Kumar case. Krishna Kumar case. It is also related to re-promulgation of ordinance. Re-promulgation of ordinance by Bihar, in which the Supreme Court declared the re-promulgated ordinance unconstitutional. The re-promulgated ordinance unconstitutional. The re-promulgated ordinance unconstitutional, and remarked re-promulgation was a fraud on constitution. Re-promulgation was a fraud on constitution. However, it did not override Vadhva exception. Vadhva exception, and hence it survives. Hence it survives. It means, change paragraph, it means repromulgation in general is not unconstitutional. Repromulgation in general is not unconstitutional. Rather, case by case it can be decided. Case by case it can be decided. Interestingly, union and state governments have gone in repromulgating ordinances after 2017, first 2017, first the union government has repromulgated two ordinances, one related to regulation of air pollution in Delhi, one related to regulation of air pollution in Delhi, and second, medical commission. Next, Kerala has repromulgated 5 ordinances. Kerala has repromulgated 5 ordinances. Kerala has repromulgated 5 ordinances. The Supreme Court in Krishna Kumar case. Raised concerns related to repromulgation. By explaining that first, shortage of time by legislature. Shortage of time by legislature can be overcome by extending the session of legislature. Annex, repromulgation should be made impermissible. As it is against rule of law. So basically, maybe next time they may not be confident enough to nullify Vadhva exception, but they have nullified one logic. Logic is that how there can be shortage of, let's say, time. If you have to at all pass an ordinance, so you can extend the session. It is in the hand of speaker. It is in the hand of the house to extend the session. Saying that there can be shortage, let's accept that yes, there is shortage of session. But how many times? Can we say next session was also shortage? Right. Like say ki repromulgation of land acquisition bill. So once repromulgation is done, it is acceptable. Now again you are repromulgating. So then we cannot accept that there is shortage of time. This we can say. So they have raised their concerns, and this is how it is. It questions the very rule of law. In fact, the very basis of separation of powers. This, anyhow, let's write. Cons of ordinances means criticisms of ordinance. Pros already we have written. Cons we have to write. CONS. No, cons. Cons. Anyhow. So वैसे ही है, दोनों में कोई ज्यादा डिफरेंस है नहीं, isn't it? So cons of ordinances. Cons of ordinances, right? First, it is considered breach of separation of powers. It is considered breach of separation of powers because lawmaking is the role of legislature. Lawmaking is the role of legislature, and executive is responsible for law execution. Law execution. In bracket, it is not also considered a healthy practice in democracy. It is also not considered a healthy practice in democracy, like in US and UK. US and UK. Okay. Next, usurpation of powers. Usurpation of powers. It results within that. It results into executive encroaching the powers of legislature, which can become basis for executive and bureaucratic excesses. In terms of arbitrary exercise of powers. Threat to constitutionalism. Due to absoluteness of power. Threat to constitutionalism due to absoluteness of powers. Next, it is a delegated power. Hence, executive does not enjoy. It is a delegated power. Hence, executive does not enjoy this power at first place. But the way it has been exercised, it is exercised, it becomes a sort of attack on lawmaking power of the legislature. Lawmaking power of the legislature. Next, its misuse has gone to an extent. Extent that the courts and experts have used the terms like first Ordinance Raj, next governance by ordinance, ordinance, threat to constitutionalism, fraud on constitution, next fraud on constitution. Right. This, that is how we can say this about ordinances. Now, so what we should do? Way forward. Right. Since it is related to right, executive powers, when Parliament is in recess, to proclaim an ordinance, only in extraordinary situation, the government should have constitutional morality. In exercise of ordinances. They should themselves not exercise ordinance making power by taking it as exception rather than rule. In paragraph, the president should also at least once send the advice for reconsideration. If situation is not urgent, repromulgation should also be not done more than once. simply because there cannot be shortage of time for the session of Parliament second time, okay. And certainly not for 14 years, and certainly not for 14 years. 14 years. Change paragraph. When law is made through ordinance, which originally should have been made by legislature, then it does not get opportunity for the same legislative scrutiny, and it remains in operation, at least for 6 months and 6 weeks. 6 months and 6 weeks, which gives scope for executive arbitrary governance. Even in constituent assembly, concerns were raised like KT Shah, remarked, ordinance was against rule of law. Ten paragraph. The government should learn from the first phase of ordinances. That the list number of ordinances were issued. And in the context of public administration, there is concept of constitutionalism. Ordinances are not manifestation of constitutionalism. That is what it is. So when we write in public administration, we use some of the terms, although there is no much difference between GS and public administration when we talk about ordinances. But yes, when we talk about constitutionalism, the best government is the least government. This is how lawmaking, rule of law, good governance. So certainly constitutionalism is also not a manifestation of good governance. And we cannot justify, but it becomes a trend because these things do not have much attention, public attention. A law can be issued as ordinance, hardly you will know about this. You will know only when it has been either challenged or it has been misused. You will never know that when an ordinance is issued. But when a bill is introduced in parliament, so that then it will go through that public glare. People will know about this. There will be debate and discussion. There will be scrutiny. And let's say that committees can find flaws, you improve it. But when a law is made by ordinance, these ordinances, let's say, they will not have that scrutiny, and hence they can have certain arbitrariness, which even executive knows that for 6 months and 6 weeks nobody can stop that law and it will survive. And after 6 months and 6 weeks, you know that out of sight, out of mind. This basically it happens that once it has been implemented for 6 months, then you introduce in parliament, then the members will think that already it has been implemented for 6 months. So let's leave it. They may be approved. Or legitimacy to reject becomes less, because already it is in operation for 6 months and 6 weeks. So that happened because after 6 months and 6 weeks, if you issue today an ordinance, the today issue can be different. Suppose after 6 months any other issue is important and in priority, ordinance is not in priority. No, suppose ordinance is subject to get approval and Pegasus came. तो अपोजिशन को क्या बात मिलेगा? मुद्दा बड़े मुद्दे पे बात करो, तो छोटे मुद्दे पे बात नहीं होगा. This way, and then Hindenburg let's say comes, isn't it? और अभी तो कुछ और ही चल रहा है. So big issues next time after 6 months, 6 weeks, what happens? These things you do not know. So that way, let's say that there can be excesses. That is how you should not avoid it. And major democracy like US, UK do not have such practice, even if they have continuous, let's say, basis. And Nehru, that we have not dictated. Just will share. So Nehru and G.V. Maulankar. The G.V. Maulankar wrote a letter to Nehru regarding concerns about ordinances. Just imagine, there were less ordinances and still G.V. Maulankar wrote a letter to Prime Minister, right, raising his concerns. Then Nehru had a return letter to Maulankar and saying him that we will ensure that ordinances are issued only in urgent situations. That is one record, let's say that it is given as example that era, and we should learn from this rather than going for repromulgation. Now at a state level it has become also, so many facts are there how to write all these facts, but yes, recently Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, so they have issued ordinances, 45 ordinances, 50 ordinances, as if assembly में law बनता ही नहीं है. No, सिर्फ समोसा खाने के लिए बैठ कर. यूपी असेंबली का आपने देखा ही होगा. नो, सिस्टम पे वो क्या देख रहे हैं पता ही नहीं चलता है. कभी वहां भी कैमरा जाना चाहिए. अब उसने कभी कंप्यूटर चलाया नहीं है. योगी जी ने कंप्यूटर लगवा दिया. कोई बात में उन लॉजिक होता नहीं है. जो बात वो करते हैं वो इतना पुराना होता है. मतलब देश कैसे आगे बढ़ेगा, स्टेट कहाँ से आगे बढ़ेगा. लेजिस्लेचर, and legislature, the members, etc., they will talk about, you know what they talk. This, yes, not offended. वो तो जब आप when you will appear in interview, so you will try to know about Uttar Pradesh. जिस भी प्रदेश से आप आते हो, right? You will try to know about your state, Haryana, isn't it? So you will try to search budget of Haryana. Budget है ही नहीं. So यूनियन बजट तो मिल जाता है. टेक्स्ट ऑफ बजट, राइट. तो यू गेट टेक्स्ट ऑफ बजट, बट यू गो टू यूपी वेबसाइट, राइट. and you find it difficult to prepare for your state. Right? You don't get updated information. You have to talk to this source, that source, no, to search, because updated information not given. If at all it is updated, then it is the language problem. नो, मान लो हिंदी में मिलेगा तो आपको समझ में नहीं आएगा जीडीपी को क्या बोलते हैं. नो, क्या बोलते हैं. राइट, राइट, सकल घरेलू right. So that so all these things, right? Right. So this is the challenge, right? Anyhow, the law-making process, right? Let's finish this ordinance, right? We'll take next topic. Executive finish. We'll take legislative functions, right?